Step out of the vehicle. And calm down. I need you calm for me. The man behind the wheel of the black Mercedes hadn't said a word yet. His hands rested at the top of the steering wheel, 10 and 2, fingers loose. His license and registration were already laid out on the dash, in plain view, before the officer had finished walking up. He was calm. He had been calm since the blue lights came up behind him on Route 9, just past the Sunoco at the edge of town. That was the problem. Sir, I'm not going to ask twice. A car like this, on a road like this time of night, you want to tell me whose it is? It's mine, the man said. His voice was low and even. The registration is on the dash. The name on it matches the name on my license. Funny, everybody's name matches something. Sergeant Doug Renner leaned down, one forearm on the door, close enough that the man could smell the coffee on his breath. You seem real worked up. I need you to take a breath. Can you do that for me? He wasn't worked up. He was the calmest person within a mile. And both men knew it. Renner reached through the window, took the registration off the dash, and didn't read it. He crumpled it in one fist, glanced at it the way you glance at a receipt you're about to throw away, and dropped it onto the gravel shoulder. Then, he opened the door himself. Out. Hands. Where I can see them. We're going to search the vehicle. The man stepped out slowly. He kept his hands open, palms forward, every motion deliberate and visible. He did not reach for his pocket. He did not reach for his phone. He counted, silently, the things being done to him. No reason stated for the stop. Registration destroyed. A search with no consent and no probable cause. He counted them the way other men count their breaths. A teenager filming from the gas station laughed and narrated for whoever was on the other end of the call. A man in a pickup slowed at the light, looked, gave a small approving nod, and drove on. A woman walking a dog crossed to the far sidewalk and put her head down and did not look again. Renner spun him toward the hood and put the cuffs on. The metal was cold. The man said nothing. He has no idea. Because the man Sergeant Doug Renner just ordered to calm down, the man he just cuffed against the hood of his own car, is the Honorable Elijah Monroe, Chief Judge of the State Court of Appeals. And in 6 days, Doug Renner will walk into Courtroom 5C to testify in a case he is absolutely certain he is going to win. He has no idea who will be sitting on the bench. He has no idea that these next 6 days are the last 6 days of the only life he has ever known. But this story doesn't start here. His name is Elijah Monroe. He is 58 years old. For 9 of those years he has sat on the State Court of Appeals, the second highest court in the state. And for the last 2, he has been its chief judge, which means that when a question of law in this state cannot be answered, it is answered, finally, by him. He did not come from money. Elijah Monroe's father, Walter, carried mail for the United States Postal Service for 41 years. Same route. Same bag. Rain, snow, the heat that came off the asphalt in July. Walter Monroe walked 12 miles a day for 4 decades so that his son would never have to. Elijah's mother cleaned offices downtown at night. The same offices full of lawyers Elijah would one day argue in front of and, later, rule over. He studied law at night because the days belonged to work. He read by a lamp in a kitchen that was cold in the winter because the heat got turned down to save money. He passed the bar on the first try. He told his father first. On Elijah Monroe's dresser there is a watch. It is not expensive. It is a steel Timex with a cracked crystal and a worn leather band, and it kept his father's time for 30 years. Walter Monroe wore it on every one of those 12-mile days. When he died, 4 years ago in the spring, before he ever got to see his son made chief judge, Elijah took the watch off his father's wrist himself. He wears it on the days that matter and on the days that hurt. The night Doug Renner pulled him over, Elijah Monroe was wearing that watch. He was driving home from the cemetery. It was the 4th anniversary of his father's death, and he had sat at the grave until well past 11, talking quietly to a man who could no longer answer. And then he had gotten in his car to drive home. He wasn't speeding. He had committed no violation. He was a tired man in a nice car going home from his father's grave. That is the whole of what Elijah Monroe did wrong that night. He was driving while being who he was. Now the other man. Sergeant Doug Renner has worn the badge for 19 years. He has been named Officer of the Year twice. His face is on the recruitment billboard out by the interstate, square jaw, flag patch, the word service. Honor, courage, the literal face the department shows the public when it wants to be trusted. There is another file on Doug Renner. It is thick. 23 civilian complaints over 19 years. Excessive force. Unlawful search. A pattern, always the same, against the same kind of people. 23 complaints, and 23 times the finding came back the same word, unfounded. Internal Affairs reviewed every one. Internal Affairs for most of those years answered to Captain Raymond Walsh, the man who pinned both Officer of the Year medals on Renner's chest. The man Renner calls at home. The man who taught him that the report is the truth, and the truth is whatever the report says. Doug Renner is not a monster who fell out of the sky. He is a man the system built, rewarded, promoted, and protected for 19 years. He believes, all the way down, that he is one of the good ones. That is what makes him dangerous. And that is what is about to make his fall so complete. They booked Elijah Monroe at 1:40 in the morning. He gave his name. He gave his date of birth. He did not say the word judge, not once. He stood for the photograph. He let them take his fingerprints, his belt, his shoelaces, and his father's watch, which a desk officer dropped into a manila envelope without looking at it. Then they put him in a holding cell with a man sleeping it off and a fluorescent light that buzzed. He could have ended it with one sentence. He knew that. Every minute in that cell, he knew exactly which sentence would open the door. I am the chief judge of the State Court of Appeals, and exactly how fast Renner's face would change if he said it. He did not say it. He sat on the steel bench with his back straight, and he waited, because somewhere underneath the exhaustion, he had already understood something about that night that the rest of them had not. He made one phone call. He kept his voice steady, the way you'd ask for a glass of water. "It's me," he said. "I'm fine. I need you to listen carefully and write down everything I tell you." On the other end of the line was Adrienne Monroe. For 22 years, Adrienne Monroe was a federal prosecutor, public corruption, civil rights, the cases nobody else wanted to touch. She retired from the department 2 years ago and started a podcast about accountability in the justice system. It has 1.6 million subscribers. She did not panic when the phone rang at 1:40 in the morning. She got a pen. She wrote down the time of the stop, the badge number, the name Renner, the location, the fact that the registration had been destroyed. She did not cry. She did not scream. She pressed record on a second device, set it on the kitchen counter, and started making calls. Documentation wins, she told the lawyer she woke up at 2 in the morning. Emotion loses. Evidence is everything. Get me the dash cam and the body cam before anyone in that department has time to think. 5 days. Somewhere in the same building where they were booking Elijah Monroe, A lieutenant in internal affairs named Grace Okafor was awake. Because she was always awake at that hour, going through the overnight booking logs the way other people read the morning paper. She had been watching Doug Renner for 3 years. She had the 23 complaints memorized. She had every one of Captain Walsh's unfounded findings printed and flagged. She had been waiting, quietly, patiently, building, for a single case the department could not bury. A case with a witness they couldn't intimidate. A victim they couldn't smear, evidence they couldn't lose. At 1:52 a.m., a name came across the booking log under one of Renner's arrests. Monroe, Elijah, Hahn, Lieutenant Okafor sat very still for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. "I've been waiting 3 years," she said, to no one, to herself, for someone Walsh couldn't silence. She started pulling the body cam footage before the night shift could decide it had malfunctioned. Doug Renner, that same night, posted to the department's internal group chat. Another long one out on 9. "Some guys think the job's about hugs. Job's about control." 3 colleagues gave it a thumbs up. He went home and slept like a man who had done good work. 5 days. They released Elijah Monroe at 6 in the morning. No charges filed. There was nothing to charge him with, which had been true the entire time. A sergeant at the desk handed him the manila envelope with his watch in it and did not apologize, because he did not know there was anything to apologize for. Monroe put his father's watch back on his wrist in the parking lot as the sun came up. Then he drove himself home and went to work. That is the thing about the days that followed. Elijah Monroe went to work. He sat on the bench. He read briefs. He said nothing to anyone at the courthouse about the night on Route 9. He carried it quietly, the way he carried everything. But other things were moving. 4 days out, Lieutenant Okafor had the body cam footage locked down on 3 separate drives and a copy with the state's Oversight Commission. The footage was worse than the complaint. Renner had left his camera running the whole time. Confident as a man is confident when he has never once paid a price. It captured all of it. The crumpled registration, the order to calm down, 11 times, given to a silent man. The cuffs. A younger officer standing just off Renner's shoulder, watching, saying nothing. That younger officer was named Tyler Brooks. 2 years on the job. He had stood at the edge of the dashcam frame the whole night with a look on his face that the camera caught, even if Renner never did. When they got back to the station that night, Brooks had said one thing, quietly, while Renner typed his report. "Just make sure that one's airtight." He had known. He had known exactly what he was looking at, and he had used procedure to avoid saying the word. He went home and didn't sleep. But he didn't call anyone either. Not yet. 3 days out, Adrienne Monroe had a 38-minute episode recorded and scheduled. She did not name her husband in it. She did not have to. She laid out the pattern. A man, a stop, a destroyed document, 11 orders to calm down given to someone who never raised his voice, and she let her 1.6 million listeners feel the shape of it. The episode was set to publish the morning of the hearing. She knew exactly when to pull the trigger. She had spent 22 years learning when. Doug Renner spent those 3 days the way he spent every other 3 days. He worked out. He told the story at the precinct, laughing, about the guy in the Mercedes who thought he was somebody. He prepared, lightly, for a suppression hearing in an unrelated case, State v. Ellis, where he was the arresting officer and the defense had filed some motion he wasn't worried about. His own lawyer had told him it was routine. Show up, testify, go home. The original judge had recused for a scheduling conflict, and the case had been reassigned. Renner didn't bother to check to whom. Judges were judges. 2 days. He posted a photo of his boots up on his desk. Easy week. The morning of the hearing, Adrienne Monroe's podcast went live at 7 a.m. By 9, it had 400,000 plays. By the time Doug Renner parked his truck outside the courthouse, the comment sections of 3 local news pages were already on fire, though Renner didn't know it, because he wasn't the kind of man who read comments. He walked up the courthouse steps the way he walked everywhere. He thought today was easy. Courtroom 5C. He'd been in it a dozen times. He took the bench out of the corner of his eye the way you take in furniture, sat in the gallery, checked his phone, waited for his case to be called. The bailiff called the room to order. All rise. The Honorable Elijah Monroe presiding. Doug Renner stood up because everyone stood up. And then he looked at the bench. The color drains from his face. It happens all at once. The man in the black robe settling into the high-backed chair, reaching for the file, adjusting a pair of reading glasses, is the man from Route 9. The man he crumpled the registration in front of. The man he ordered, 11 times, to calm down. There is a steel Timex with a cracked crystal on the wrist that reaches for the gavel. The whole courtroom froze. Not because anyone announced anything, because the bailiff saw Renner's face and went still. The clerk saw it and stopped typing. The prosecutor turned to look. For a long second, the only sound in Courtroom 5C is the buzz of the lights. And Doug Renner is standing in the gallery with his mouth open and nothing coming out of it. And 100 people are watching a 19-year career end in real time without a single word being spoken. Judge Monroe looked up over the glasses. His voice was low and even. The same voice. The calmest voice in the room. Sergeant Renner. You can sit down. Renner did not sit down. His knees seemed to have forgotten how. He was breathing fast now, short, shallow. The breaths of a man who has lost control of something he never imagined he could lose. And the Honorable Elijah Monroe, Chief Judge of the State Court of Appeals, looked at the man who had ordered him to calm down on the side of the road and said the only 3 words the moment required. Calm down, Sergeant. Then he did the hardest thing of all. He recused himself from State v. Ellis. On the record, in open court, he stated that he had a personal conflict involving the witness, Sergeant Renner, and could not preside. He would not be the judge of his own grievance. He would not let one man's misconduct become an excuse to compromise an unrelated defendant's rights. Even now, especially now, he did everything by the book. He counted the violations. He did not commit one of his own. But before he stepped down from the case, he said one more thing, and he said it not to Renner and not to the gallery, but to the camera the court permitted, to the city, to everyone who would ever stand on a roadside with their hands at 10 and 2. I want to be clear about something, because someone will ask me why I didn't simply say who I was that night. I could have. I had the words in my pocket the whole time. One sentence, and the handcuffs come off. He paused. But the next person Sergeant Renner stops won't be a judge. They'll be a teacher, a nurse, a kid going home from work. And they won't have a sentence in their pocket. If I have to announce a title to be treated like a citizen, then the badge means nothing for the man behind me in line. The protection has to be for everyone, or it isn't protection. It's privilege. He let that sit. Authority is a trust. The moment it's used to make a citizen smaller instead of safer, it stops being authority and becomes the very thing it was created to stop. The law does not exist to protect the people who wield it. It exists to protect the people from them. He set down the file. The room did not move. We're adjourned. The reckoning did not come like thunder. It came the way real reckonings come. one specific consequence at a time, each one named. The body cam footage Lieutenant Okafor had locked down was released by the Oversight Commission that afternoon. By evening, it had been viewed more than 2 million times. 11 orders to a silent man. The whole country could count them now. By the end of the week, the state's attorney announced charges against Doug Renner: unlawful detention, falsification of an official report, and deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal count, after the Department of Justice opened its own file on the morning of the second day. His badge was collected on a Tuesday. His service weapon was surrendered the same hour. The union, which had defended him through 23 complaints, issued a 2-sentence statement and stopped returning his calls. The 23 buried complaints came out of the dark all at once. The Oversight Commission pulled every one of them, and the pattern that Captain Walsh had spent a decade calling unfounded was suddenly visible to everybody, in a single document, in a single afternoon. Captain Raymond Walsh resigned within 72 hours. He cleaned out his office on a Sunday morning so there would be no one there to see it. No ceremony, no farewell. Cardboard boxes and silence. His pension is frozen pending the federal review. Doug Renner pleaded out 11 months later. He served 31 months of a 38-month sentence. He is permanently barred from law enforcement in every state. He still owes a civil judgment he will be paying for the rest of his life. The billboard out by the interstate, service, honor, courage, came down quietly one night and was never replaced. Officer Tyler Brooks testified. He did not have to. He walked into the commission's office on the third day, before anyone subpoenaed him, and he told them everything he had seen and everything he had failed to say. I knew, he told them. I stood right there and I knew, and I told him to make the report airtight instead of telling him to stop. That's the part I have to live with. His testimony was not heroic, and he did not pretend it was. He was suspended for his silence, and then, after a year, reinstated into a new role training recruits on exactly the kind of stop he had watched and not stopped. He took the assignment. It was the closest thing to penance the system had to offer, and he took it. A year later, Elijah Monroe still drives the same black Mercedes. He still wears the steel Timex with the cracked crystal. He still sits on the State Court of Appeals, and the spring after the hearing, the court handed down an opinion he wrote himself. An opinion narrowing the protections that had shielded officers like Doug Renner from the consequences of willful misconduct. He did not mention Route 9 in it. He did not have to. People knew. Adrienne Monroe's podcast crossed 2 million subscribers. The episode about the stop is still the most played thing she has ever made. She gets messages every week from people who were stopped, who were searched, who were told to calm down when they were already calm, and she answers as many of them as she can. Lieutenant Grace Okafor was promoted to run the oversight unit she had spent 3 years feeding evidence from the shadows. She keeps the 23 complaints in a binder on her shelf. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how long the system can look at something and call it nothing. The teenager who filmed the stop at the Sunoco and laughed never posted the video. But a year later, he enrolled in a Know Your Rights training program run out of a community center on the east side. And he was the youngest person in the room, and he sat in the front. On the anniversary of his father's death, Elijah Monroe drove out to the cemetery again. He sat at the grave a long time, the way he always does. He told his father about the year. He told him about the watch, which still keeps good time. Then he drove home, slower than the speed limit, the way a tired man drives. Adrienne was on the porch when he pulled in. He sat down next to her, and they watched the light go down over the yard, and for a while neither of them said anything. Because some things you only need to say once and then keep close. You think it changed anything? She asked finally. A little, he said. Not enough, it never is. No, he turned the watch on his wrist. But somebody has to be watching, and the day we stop, they win. She put her hand over his. The light went down. Tomorrow there would be another case, another stop, another road. There always is. For tonight, the porch was quiet, and the two of them sat in it, and that was enough. If this story put something in your chest, anger or recognition, or the simple need to make sure it doesn't happen to the next person, then send it to someone who needs to hear it. Stories like Elijah Monroe's don't travel on their own. We carry them. That's the whole job. And before you go, tell me something in the comments, because I read them. Have you ever stayed calm in a moment where someone was counting on you to lose it? And what did that cost you? Say it here. Someone scrolling past tonight needs to know they're not the only one who held the line. Subscribe and stand with this channel, not to follow it, but to be part of it. Because every person watching is one more witness, and a system only changes when enough people refuse to look away. Someone has to be watching. Tonight, it's you.